welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's edition of the program, we'll be discussing about the increase in fuel pump price recently announced by the federal government. We also have other interesting stories for you. We will be right back.
The meeting between the federal government and organized labor ended without a compromise. Labor insisted the recent fuel price increase be reserved for any meaningful discussion to hold, necessitating an adjournment to Monday. The new date was arrived at following government's inability to immediately meet the demand of labor, even after some sessions of consultations. The government and labor are engaged in talks to avert a nationwide strike over increase in the price of petrol and electricity tariff. The new date afforded the government the opportunity to consult widely over the demands of labor.
We adjourn till the next 1 week for NNPC and the Minister of Petroleum to do proper consultation on the reversal of the fuel price back to what it was before. And that was our conclusion. The meeting is adjourned till Monday. So until Monday, before we can know the conclusion of the meeting.
We're going back to consult with our principals, and by Monday, we'll come back. That's Monday, the 7th of December. Because the message from the organized labor is clear, and they want a reversal of the pump price to what it was, so the government side will take it back. Even though we know government is not fixing prices of PMS anymore because it's deregulated, but it's part of the economy, so government side will consult everybody that needs to be consulted. The president as Minister of Petroleum, and then the economy management team, because funds are involved.
In 1989, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 20th of November every year as Africa Industrialization Day. This is to raise awareness on the need for the economic and industrial development in Africa. At this event, labor leaders from different unions are resolute to discuss the theme of 2020 event titled Inclusive and Sustainable Industrialization in COVID-19 Era. Deputy President of the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC), Joe Ajero, said the country needs to build human capital by investing in education, while it is essential to build roads and transport infrastructure to facilitate establishment of manufacturing hubs.
Deliberate steps must be taken to protect our local manufacturers, while the over-politicization of critical national issues should be stopped. Investment in the necessary infrastructure that will drive industrialization must be made by government as an enabler, while wrong policies crafted and implemented in the past must be courageously reviewed, especially the privatization of electricity. And there is no industrial development without electricity.
It's not possible.
It can't happen. And Nigeria is at the floor of countries with power poverty. For you to measure the capacity of power, every 1 million group will have 1,000 megawatts. That's indices globally.
Other labor leaders at the event spoke on the need for relevant stakeholders to learn from the COVID-19 pandemic experience, insisting that there must be industrialization agenda. Others who took part in the 2020 Africa Industrialization Day spoke about emerging challenges in various sectors and how trade unions respond to effects of COVID-19 pandemic.
Let them improve on our electricity. Number two, the security. In an environment where there's no security, no investor would like to come there and invest. Then number three, the government cannot do it alone. They have to encourage the private sector.
The benefit of industrialization. We don't need to talk about that because we've seen the benefit of the industrialization in the 70s, in the 80s, with mass employment across the different industrial areas. we've also seen the damage that the structural adjustment and the market-oriented economic management has given to industries in Nigeria.
We must equally educate our members on personal improvement and accountability that will see them improve on their job deliverables while improving their skills for further opportunities for growth in the ever-changing, fast-paced environment. All we are trying to do is that you should be multi-skilled. Don't just rely on one skill, because the way the country is going, nobody knows.
It was concluded at the conference that Africa must stop exporting crude oil, mineral resources and the likes, and stop importing finished products from European countries, and must continue to support made in African goods, which will in turn create more industries.
This time, you know, the generality of the populace should be pampered, you know, because we don't have any other means of livelihood. When the lockdown was on, livelihoods were seriously affected, and one would expect that fuel price increase at this time should be the last thing that the government should consider. That's number one. Number two, I don't see, I have studied the entire mathematics, the entire economics in Nigeria of deregulation of petroleum product pump price, and have come to the sad conclusion that the government does not in any way, I say does not in any way subsidize petroleum products for the citizenry.
It is outrageous for any meaningful government that has a concern for our citizens to go the way this government is going. And that's why we can continue to find ourselves in this kind of chaos where our refineries are not working. Our depots are all moribund. Nothing is functioning. The country that is the 6th or the 7th largest producer of hydrocarbon is an importer of petroleum products. It's unheard of anywhere in the world. And so for me, the mouthpiece of the common man, which is the civil society and the labor movement, should be able to come out to begin to speak out to this act of wickedness.
On the Profile Interview segment this week, I will be speaking with the Deputy Majority Leader of the NASS Assembly, Comrade Peter Akpatasin, who also doubles as a former National President of NUPENG. It tells us what the National Assembly is doing towards ensuring that workers' rights are being protected. He also gave his view on the several challenges the oil and gas sector is faced with and the possible solutions towards the issue of deregulation of the oil sector in Nigeria. We will be right back. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
A pleasure.
Recently, the federal government announced the increase in the price of petroleum products. What would be the take of the NASS Assembly as a Deputy Majority Leader? What's your view on this development?
First, as Peter Patterson, I believe that Nigerians, irrespective of our status, irrespective of who you are in the country just now, should be very conscious and sensitive to the agitations, you know, of the SARS group that we had to contend with, you know, recently, and the possibility of any ill-thought-out policy of government to trigger, you know, further agitation in the country. This nation suffered very devastating consequences as a result of those agitations, and I'm sure that we all agree that irrespective of the fact that at some point some hoodlums hijacked the protests, at the beginning they had very, and I believe even up to now, they have very germane reasons for calling for good governance and an end to impunity and poor management and leadership in this country. So it will appear insensitive for anybody to begin to increase prices at this point when the nation is yet to fully recover from the devastating effect of those protests. I thought that we should properly harness our energies and resources towards addressing the issues that were raised and issues that have been on the front burners for quite a long time. You know, particularly now that the youth have decided to draw attention to those issues. So it's strange to me, you know, that anybody will contemplate increasing fuel prices at this point. We are all experiencing the level of price skyrocketing across the country. When you increase minimum wage and you go around to increase the cost of goods and services, the cost of transportation, because indirectly when you increase petroleum price, petroleum product prices, you are increasing the cost of transportation. You can't detach the two from each other. That is what it is. So if you are inflating the economy after a meager increase in the minimum wage, and people are still agitating for a lot of increases and all that, I think we are not being fair to the people, and I'm not in a position to support that. I believe that my group, the leadership of the House and the House of Representatives, will hardly accept, you know, such decision at this point in time.
As representative of the people, many are of the view that the Assembly is not taking into cognizance the growing poverty level in the country. What would be your reaction towards this development?
I'm not in a position to disagree with that. The truth is that we have not been able to do all that we needed to do, all that we ought to do, you know, to address poverty in this country. But unfortunately, there's just a little that anybody can do or any group can do in isolation in this country just now. For the legislative arm to achieve anything, you need the cooperation of the executive, and you need the support and cooperation of those who implement policies of government, because a lot of the issues actually bother more about, you know, implementation of, you know, what we currently have on ground. We have policies and programs that are being implemented. If they are properly implemented, if they trickle down properly, you know, some of these people will not feel exactly as they feel. So I think, you know, on our part, we need to do more. We have been doing so much, and I believe particularly in recent time, if you look at the body language of the House as reflected in the Speaker's comments from time to time, and the actions that we have taken, you know, on the floor of the House, and policies that we have supported, as well as legislation, you know that there's a conscious attempt to move forward, but then, you know, the forces are not all, you know, in support of that pace that we want to, at which we want to operate. However, we are trying to, we have over the years tried to develop a more cordial relationship with the executive arm, so that we can get the support of the executive to ensure that the programs of the parliament are, you know, properly implemented to touch, you know, the concerns of the people, as well as to help to improve the lot of the people.
Can you tell us more about these forces, and can you expatiate if there are any people bill on the floor of the House that are going through considerations?
I think the real forces bother on implementation, not the number of bills that have been passed, or even legislation. You know, implementation is what is key at this point in time. You are aware that we have come up with a lot of motions in the House, motions that we believe, if given the necessary attention, will address most of the concerns of Nigerians. A motion is usually a response to some of the concerns of the people, either in small groups or in large groups. Because they cannot on their own come to the floor of the House, they cannot go to government houses in the various states, as well as you know, in Abuja, to agitate for themselves or to present the issues on their own. These issues are passed through the parliament, and by the time we use the right instrument of the House, which is motion, to present such issues. You hear appointees of government coming up to say motions lack, the powers of law. But this law is meant for the people, right? And not the people for the law. So motion has the backing of the people. Motion is a reflection of what the people want. And for somebody to say that until you translate the motion to law, they cannot obey such motions, then we are actually, procrastinating unnecessarily. And this is one major area that we are very concerned about just now.
As a former president of NUPENG and as an experienced labor leader, what would be your take on the growing concern of state governments not paying minimum wage?
Well, I think the labor unions have a lot of role to play. They have been doing quite well, but I think they need to do more. When a health condition, seems to be stubborn, when the regular medication is administered, you have to devise new therapies for such, medical situation. You understand? I don't know whether people are afraid to challenge governors in this country. I don't see the reason why a governor will have the effrontery to say it's not implementing the minimum wage. When, despite their claims about not having sufficient money, they have the most bogus, security votes, and they will be there to talk about other layers of government, other tiers of government, often pointing at the federal level as if you don't have responsibility to do the right thing at the state level. And it baffles me when people will leave their states and come to Abuja to only look at what is happening in Abuja and make all the noise in Abuja and champion, campaigns without looking back home and starting from home. I thought that charity begins at home. Okay. But I'm not making excuses for federal level, to be very honest. But I believe that the agitation should start from the local government. A lot of money is good to local government, and at the end of the day, nobody knows what such monies are used for. I'm not trying to make a case for federal, to be very honest. If you go to most local governments in the country today, the 744 local governments, the biggest government presence you see is constituency projects from the federal level. You can go and check this. And you can ask agencies of government that have done, some checks in the past. So what do they do with their money at the local government level? If the local governments are doing the right thing, the level of poverty will not be half of what we have today. The very powerful governors of the state, they equally have a lot of money. And for anybody to say cannot pay minimum wage, I think is just making mockery of the whole thing. Adams Oshomole was the first to pay above the minimum wage. Edo State is not very rich, wasn't very rich, under his watch. Neither is he very rich today, but Edo State is not one of the poorest. However, with the little that he had at his disposal, Adams Oshomole was able to pay above the minimum wage. So there's no excuse whatsoever why any governor cannot pay above minimum wage. But just pay the minimum wage, they are reluctant. It shows that they don't care about those who voted them in. And those people too, I think in most cases they are docile. Rather than come out and agitate for what is due to them, what is their right, they would rather be looking at what is happening in the villa. For me, that is a big gap that must be covered. People must talk to their local government leadership, and people must talk to their leadership at state level, and more people will have to talk to the federal. But if you leave the local government and the state, and you are focusing only at the center, then you continue to have the kind of situation that we have in our hands.
Youth unemployment is a big issue at the moment. Looking at the issue of COVID-19 pandemic, which seems to be a reality till date, what is the Ninth Assembly doing to address this issue?
Yes, the Ninth Assembly, came up with an agenda right from the beginning, and youth employment and gender issues are very, very germane to that document, which is the policy document that we are trying to implement. It was reviewed recently as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Employment of the youth is one of such. And you know that the issue of employment is not a thing that just happens overnight. We don't believe in the policy of asking ministries to employ more people, but rather we believe that you have to create economic activity or support economic activities that will require more hands and therefore employ more people. And that is the way we are approaching it just now. Supporting agriculture, for instance, making funds available for small and medium-scale businesses. Because if you look at what happens in the developed world, you see that a chunk of their workforce actually work for small, medium-scale businesses. The Shells and the NNPCs of this world cannot do it all. But when these small-scale businesses are happening all over the place, the tendency is for them to take out of the unemployed world more and more as their businesses progress. So we are doing the much that we can to support government policies and also to initiate, some new ideas to ensure that when there's a boost in economic activity, funding is directed, to promote such activities that will promote employment and creation of job opportunities and so on.
What is the 9th Assembly plan in terms of addressing some of the issues and demands raised by the NASS protesters? Do you think there's anything that the National Assembly can do to ensure that we don't have a reoccurrence of that development?
You are aware that the budget proposal came shortly after this whole thing, and we have a target of completing the entire process before the end of December. That's a very ambitious, a plan that we have. It's a big task. So at the moment, that is taking a lot of attention. But while this is going on, side by side, we are also looking at how to, work out a program for engaging properly identified, leaders of not the NASS per se, for those groups that are concerned about how to resolve the issues and how to ensure that we don't find ourselves in that kind of situation again. And because we believe that the way to achieve that is to ensure that proactive steps are taken to address the issues raised. The SARS itself has been ended, in quote, but to end SARS, there's a lot of things that we have to do. We have to do something about police itself. We have to do something about the members of SARS who are equally Nigerians, because you're not asking them to go to hell. Something must be done about that population itself. If it is reorientation, if it is further education and all of that, that requires funding, and we are prepared to support to the best of our ability. We're also looking at how to actually dig in to unveiling what the real reasons are, what the main concerns of groups and individuals are, so that we don't just go about chasing shadows by thinking that you already know what these concerns are, and at the end of the day, might not be the real concerns of the people. So this requires engagement. We have got some committees, of the House that are responsible for engaging different sectors. So they are going to continue to do that, particularly with greater concern this time, to make sure that within the shortest possible time, we're able to come to some level of, understanding with the people and to come up with policies and programs that will help to address the situation.
Finally, Nigeria is an import-driven country. What would be your observations, or what would be your take as an experienced labor leader that has represented workers in the oil and gas sector as regards deregulation?
There are certain things that have to be done before deregulation can be effectively implemented. We have been saying this for the 3rd decade now. nothing of such has been done. For instance, the power situation in the country has to increase. It is not what we are currently, seeing. We have said that we are going to promote modular refineries. Where are the modular refineries? And then the refineries themselves, Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries, they are still in a state of comatose as we speak today. The reasons are so many. I want to believe that one of the reasons that people have been reluctant to talk about is the human factor. There are elements in this country that don't want the refineries to work because they are traders, because they are the deal masters in the industry who are benefiting, in a very, very difficult to explain, a circumstance. They are benefiting in a way that they don't deserve. The margin of profits in the various programs, in the downstream sector is so high, so lucrative, that those who are benefiting from those programs will never allow the refineries to work. And if the refineries are not working, and we are not able to attain 95 to 100% country sufficiency in local refining, and you are deregulating, you are only deregulating suffering and poverty. Yes, because you are going to continue to import product from other climes, and then they will fix their prices. Because you have deregulated, there's no subsidy, they will bring in products at rates that you cannot afford in this country. That is what it is, It's just like saying, stop production of rice. If you don't produce rice, and government does not subsidize rice, Nigerians will not be able to eat rice. That's the truth. I am not one of those people that believe that the refineries cannot work. Some heads must rule to get the refineries to work. Traders who are working towards killing the refining industry must be fished out and dealt with in this country. The industry operators who are perpetuators must also be dealt with. Politicians who are benefiting from importation, in whatever guise it comes, they must be named and shamed. If we fail to do this, we will not get anywhere.
Thank you very much for your time. And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.